Jeev, Banjeev, Khorja. Hi, everybody. Good evening to you if you're at this part of the world, or good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to another Fireside Chat, and this is our 37th, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovids and Druids. So hi, Jamie from Ohio. Lovely to see you again. Hi, Lisa from Washington. Dean from Bedfordshire. Hi, Linda from Australia. Well done. You're up early again. Hi, Anne from Montreal. Wonderful. And Hugh from Taiwan. Lovely to see you again. Hi, Red. Nice to see you too. So it is a bright evening here in Kilkenny. I am so grateful for, it was meant to be raining, but we didn't have. So we have a bit of wind, but it's summer's a little bit here. Hi, Cliff from Cheshire. Hi, Stefan from Germany. Lovely to see you. Ava from Belgium. And Jos from Minnesota. Stephanie from Utah. Lovely. Hi, Sherry, New York. Wonderful to see you all. And Pauline from Lancashire. And Lexi. Great. Lovely to see you all. And Ashley, Stillwater. It's a nice name, isn't it? Hi, Karen. Anyway, it's lovely to see you all. And hello there from a stormy Texas. Hi, Jenna. And Lexi's from Colorado. Lovely. And Catherine from West Yorkshire. Oh, and Francis is in Lapland, Finland. What's the weather like there, Francis? That's wonderful. Great. Anyway, so let me introduce you to my guest this evening. We're going to Ireland. And I'd like to introduce you to, you're on screen, Fiona. To Fiona McDonagh. Fiona, it's just lovely to have you here. You're so welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Eimear. Sorry, I'm keeping moving forward. Give it out to me.
And it's baking hot in Finland. Wonderful. Okay.
Baking hot in Finland. Oh,
yes.
Really? Goodness, I wonder how long it'd take me to walk there.
So, Fiona, you are so welcome. And you are in Gort, County Galway. So, I don't know how long you've been living there, but just tell us what your landscape is like.
Well, we're right on the edge of the Burren, which is quite well known. A lot of people would be familiar with the landscape. It's limestone, stony. It's almost like a moonscape. It's quite unique. A lot of plants that would grow here would be quite stunted. And when I was first really engaging with foraging and that, I had lots of lovely books that, food for free and things like that. And I would be going out and looking at the picture of the hawthorn tree in the book and looking at the picture of the hawthorn tree. At one point I lived in Inishmore, and that's even more further off, obviously, the coastline. And things would be growing to a westerly direction. And I go, that doesn't look like the hawthorn tree in my book. But yeah, so there's lots of growth and it's a protected area. It's a massive national park. We're probably less than 10 minutes to it. So around the actual area, the town of Gort would be quite considered farmland and would have a lot of natural turlocks, which are underground lakes that then rise up in wintertime. So we are surrounded by water. So the Irish name for Gort is Gort Inse Gura, which is the island of Gura, and Gura had a castle in Kinvara. He was the king. And so he used to bring his cattle. Believe it or not, he used to winter in Kinvara, which is on the coast, and he would bring his cattle to Gort in the summertime because these turlocks would go down. So hence it was
grazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. And Gort is where Lady Gregory was, isn't it?
She was, be dead. W.B. Yeats was a famous poet that spent time around here. Yeah, so Cool Park would also be in part of the national parks of Ireland. It would be, probably about 5 minutes out the road. It is beautiful. It is a lovely resource. I'm, for my sins, a member of the local Scouts group, and I've been a leader for the last nearly 11 years. I tried to retire. Didn't work. They guilted me back in again. And we have a den actually in Cool Park. So we would spend a lot of time there, and particularly in the last year, we were blessed. We could hold outside meetings. So Lady Gregory gifted the estate back to the Irish state. It was a private estate.
And of course, Lady Gregory was one of the collectors of our Irish folk tales and fairy tales. she and Yeats during the Celtic Revival.
And she would have been one of the founding patrons of, is it not the Druid Theatre, the Abbey in Dublin, and W.B. Yeats, then the poet himself, he had spent time at Coole Park. He had a place that's, we'll say, well, the other side of the road, is in a place called Torballylee. It's this beautiful Norman tower. It is actually one of my favourite places. We would go, and even my kids that are teenagers now, we'd still go and play poo sticks on the bridge. You know, we drop the sticks in one side, run to the other side and see who comes out first. It's just in the most serene setting. It's beautiful. I really like it. Not a big, massive area around it, but it's lovely. And when they reopened it, because they did it up, it's 4 stories, and they opened up the castle, so go right to the top and look out on from the roof, and views are stunning, absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous setting, and it's right on the river.
Well, I remember being on the only time I was in Coole Park, I did botany 100 years ago when I was doing science for a few years, and I did botany, and we went on a field trip, and I remember going to Coole Park and discovering birds' nest orchids. They were brown, and they grew under beech trees, but they were brown. It appeared that they had no chlorophyll, but they did. It was just masked in some way, and I was fascinated. And the last photograph I saw of Torballylee was a few years ago when there was a bad flood.
There's been a couple, unfortunately,
And you can see the water coming up, I don't know how many feet high up into the...
Yeah. Bob Geldof actually appeared in a small documentary they did on Torballylee, and he came and they took him out in a little boat. But yeah, they redid or refurbished the castle itself. Would be not, I suppose, it's not furnished massively, but they would have used it for a number of different things. From little dramas, poetry recitals, they opened up tea rooms and that kind of thing. And there's a little thatched cottage beside it. Yeah, no, it's a crying shame. It's just Gort is surrounded by 3 rivers, and lots of parts of the town or around the town itself, it goes underground and it pops up in another place. And so when we get a lot of rainfall, obviously these spaces underneath fill up with water and it has to come out somewhere. And then you've got the Turlock. So it's a naturally wet area. But you could drive down past a field one day and it's bone dry. We have a few days of rain and you go, you need a boat.
Yeah.
And so, that changes what you could do with the landscape, I suppose.
I love the fact Turlocks have a name. And of course, it's also a man's name, Turlock, as in Turlock O'Carolan, the famous harper. It's wonderful. Tell me, what brought you to Druidry and to OBOD?
Well, it's partly down to yourself, Eimear. The mad thing is, I don't know that I brought myself to Druidry, actually. I think Druidry brought me along to it. I didn't go seeking it. So behind me here is this image of Bridget, right? It's the image that I commissioned from this artist lady years ago. So this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, maybe now. And I love the idea that Bridget is the goddess of healers. She's a goddess of many things, and I'd hate to start naming them out and forget one, so I'll just stick with healers. And so I had this, and I have it outside on the street on my sign. I got these. She became when I was younger. I used to travel quite a lot, and I liked the idea of making. So a lot of people have business cards. So I'm a therapist. I mean, you know this. So I'm a holistic therapist. I practice acupuncture, craniosacral, and sound therapy, and I'm also a yoga teacher. So I liked the idea of a business card, but that was a bit more than a business card. So I came up with the idea of this kind of like postcard size, right? So when I used to travel, though, so it's both a flyer, we'll say mini flyer, and it's a business card. But when I used to travel, I used to collect a shed load of postcards from wherever I went, and I'd have them stuck up in various places. So the idea was that Bridget would be on the back of this. So if somebody didn't like my mush, they'd have hers.
Lovely.
And I love the image. I mean, I said to somebody once, it's kind of quite a simple image, but it's not. It's got everything in it, and it means a lot to me because the girl who did it for me knew nothing about Bridget. She stayed with us. We really liked her, and my daughter has red hair, as you know, and so it's loosely based on her. My mother's name was Bridget. She passed away when I was 14, so there's lots of levels of it. So then I met yourself, and I went to Asia for the first time in August. Gosh, is it 3 or 4 years ago now, I think? And I suppose I've met a couple of people that would be into various things. And sometimes I have found with some groups that I would come to that I would find a bit overwhelmed in my lack, or overwhelmed in my not knowing, or who was I, or what did I do, or I'd be like, oh, I don't know. And I'd feel it wasn't the group for me. But I remember going to that egg show, and it was based partly on yourself. And I had met Anna before as well. And I went there, and I remember thinking...
Well, just so people know, it's Éagsha Spirit Celtic. It's a gathering of the pagan community in Ireland, and it was originally set up by Luke Eastwood as a member of the order, and Anna Coote, who's now a member of the order. And then Paul Corcoran, who's been a guest, and Anna and I are now the organisers. Oh, we were before COVID, and hopefully post-COVID.
Pause.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went because I had met a few people before, and I suppose I knew it was a pagan gathering, but I went with a sense of curiosity, but a potential, this might be for me, maybe it won't be. But I remember being at one of the evening events, and this guy got up, and he was saying about, I can't remember his name now, but I can see him in my mind. He was saying about how he had been to this Comic-Con thing, this gathering of people, and they were reenacting, and they were reenacting gaming. And I thought, and you're a pagan. And then somebody else was totally different again, and whatever. And I just thought, wow, I just feel so comfortable with these people. The thing that draws us together doesn't make us the same. We're all very different, yet all appreciate the same thing. And to be honest, at one point I was surrounded by a conversation of neo-druid, neo-pagan, Wiccan, blah, blah, blah. And I was going, oh, terminologies. Oh, you're confusing me. Not that they were saying it to me or putting me on the spot or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, but it was in the background. And there is that level, but I didn't at any point feel that somebody said, so, what's your story? Who are you? What do you know? What's your... And I know that other people then were discussing about who was their goddess. Who was the person that they connected with? And I was standing there like a god doll going, I don't know. Who's mine? Who's mine? Who's mine? And then all of a sudden I went, she's been outside the door for 7 years. Waiting. So now I'm Bridget-tastic. So
okay.
One of the ladies who attended my sound bath, I asked her, would she does needle felting. And I don't know if I've shown this to you. She made me this most gorgeous.
Oh, she's beautiful. Isn't she? Yeah.
And she's got the little fire and Bridget Cross, the long hair. Wonderful. I think she looks like a right little wild child.
Lovely. Brilliant.
Yeah, she is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I'm surrounded by them today because I felt a bit nervous.
Okay. So then you joined the order, and how's it been?
Good. I've joined the Bardic grade, and I suppose without a deadline, I can be a bit brutal, I confess. But I bought the audio version as well as the written one because at the time prior to the great pause of 2020, I would have, well, not every day of the week, I wouldn't do an awful lot of driving, but one day a week I would, and it would be the point where I would listen to them. And I like that. I would listen and take it in on a different level. So yeah, I found it really interesting, but there's some parts of it I totally get when I listen to. Not that I mean that I know it all. And then there's some parts I have to re-listen to. But I've realized there's bits of it, that already are there. But I just didn't know that that's what it was. Or I didn't have a name on it. Mm-hmm. People would have often called me a complete hippie tree hugger. But now I go, actually, I'm a pagan tree hugger, actually, if you don't mind, awfully. So, yeah. I've found it an interesting journey. I'm taking my time with the Bardic grade, but I don't think it is something that one rushes. Not for me, anyway. I think it's it's a life journey, really, isn't it?
That's the wonderful thing about the teaching of the order is that you take your own time. Everybody has their own pace and their own way of engaging with it, and that's what's so, I think, valuable about the individuality and that space for people to experience it in their own way, which I think is really, really important, because then there's nothing dogmatic about it, and there's no one way to be a druid. So it's your path is yours, which is lovely.
Yeah, and like years ago, oh well, even in recent times, if somebody said to me, you know, as a family, for example, would you like to go in shopping on a Sunday? I'd go, I'd rather go and sit among trees. Will you stop? Not open hell. But yeah, now I know why.
Yeah.
Well, do I need why? It doesn't matter. I just no, that wouldn't appeal to me whatsoever. But each to their own. But I do like I like gardening. I enjoy that aspect, and I like that growing something from seed and seeing it flourish and taking off, and being around nature, sticking my hands in the soil.
Yeah, you were just, and I had to stop you before that. I'm just interested.
Carried away.
No, to share with our viewers what you've been doing today. I mean, and you saw somewhere on the website, on the OBOD website.
Yeah, so we moved house a few months ago. My first purchase ever, first house purchase, I should say, not first purchase. And we've got these 2 small areas of lawn, which, well, I'm not a lawn person, and I figured for the sake of having a lawnmower to cut those, so I decided I'd plant them up. So the first thing we did before we moved into our house, before we moved in, one stick of furniture was we did a Bridget's blessing, and all the family were involved, and we went and I had a few different inputs into things to use. I had a beautiful smudge stick made by a local, a lady in Westport. I had this whiskey. My daughter took too much of a bit of a fancy to, because I went, no, it's not supposed to be for you, it's supposed to be for Bridget. She goes, oh, well, I'm her representative. Anyway, so the first thing I did, though, the first thing I moved entirely was all the potted plants that I had gathered over the years. We needed a trailer and a bit. So they were all waiting for permanent home. So one part of the lawn, it's, as I say, it's not very big. I planted up with all of these pots. And then the other part, I had this idea of putting in a pond, and then we're close to a road, and I thought, okay, maybe not that. And then I was looking through the OBOD site, and somebody had done a spiral. I can't remember in what post it was now. Somebody had done a spiral, and I went, I like that idea. So now I would call my spiral wabi-sabi, in that it's the imperfection of perfection, or the perfection of imperfection. So that's giving myself a kind of a little room to wiggle, and all of what I've used to make it has been I suppose recycled, I guess would be the best way to put it. So there was somebody who had red bricks left over from a garden patio. There was another bloke who had grey bricks. There's a stone business that's out the road from us, and they gave me these slabs that they couldn't sell because there was bits broken and whatever else. Some of them were quite big. So the middle part stands about 2 foot, and then it comes out and turns around it twice. And it ends at a lavender plant before my front door. And today then I was down at a town that's about 20 minutes away from us, and a guy was giving away soil. So I was loading up a trailer with soil. Then I got home to about 4 teens, and I asked one person, do you know what a spade is? And they said, no. I said, great, let me show you. And then I said, do you know what a shovel is? And they were, yeah, I know what a shovel. Great, you know how to use it then. So nobody got out of it. So everybody was involved in filling in my spiral for me. And I went, thank you very much. And then the heavens opened after I was finished. I put in a couple of marigold plants that I'd grown from seed. The heavens opened and blessed it. It was lovely.
So that sounds absolutely wonderful. So you have in the soil, okay, so obviously in a spiral you have 2 paths. You have the line and then the bit in between. Yeah. So in the space in between, you've got planting. That's what you've planted in the
Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful.
So I planted things, and I like things. I like gardening, but the only plant I would plant on a regular basis as an annual is sunflowers. They're about the only one. I'm a bit lazy. I like things that self-seed, and I love having the wild ones. So I've got these gorgeous Oxide Daisies that grow about 2 foot, and just a gentle breeze, and they're quite mesmerizing to watch. They're just abundant. So I can't wait for them to just take off. So they're a bit scrawny looking at the moment, but hopefully this time next year it'll all settled, and it'll have taken over, and I'll be as happy as a pig in the proverbial.
Well, it's interesting, when you move house and you have a new garden, it takes a while for everything to settle. And obviously you work more organically rather than coming into a perfectly planned, manicured garden with a plan and everything goes in and everything's ready. It's that things start from seed, or they're transplanted, or you're taken soil from somebody, and I think it's wonderful that, and in its own time, it creates itself.
Oh, absolutely. And we don't have it's not a massive site that our house is on, but like somebody said to me, oh gosh, that's not a big garden for you now. And I went, I will use every inch of it. And I already have 2 elder trees planted at the back. I got a rowan tree from another friend, and they asked me what I would like as a housewarming gift. I said, oh, rowan tree to keep away the witches. So it's planted on the west side.
That's lovely.
I don't know why I chose the west side, because the wind comes from there. I said, that'll keep away the witches. So, yeah. And somebody gifted me a yew tree, actually, an Irish yew.
Lovely.
And so I'm kind of gathering up. So what I'm hoping, I might have to not have an oak tree totally as one of but my house would be the center of my grove. So
very
all
good.
around the edges. Yeah, I might have to guerrilla plant an oak in the yard next door. And sure, by the time it matures, by 300 years, I won't be around. So it'll be somebody else's problem. I mean.
Oh, wonderful. Tell me, can you remember your first spiritual experience?
Goodness. Gosh. How does one define a spiritual experience as opposed to just a rather moving, intense experience?
That's up to you. Only you can just. It's a very open question.
I suppose if something moves my spirit, it's spiritual, is it?
If it feels like
I wouldn't necessarily always associate it with a somebody or something outside of me, as in terms of a god or goddess or.
Could be a tree, could be a bird. It's.
Well, I can think of one experience I had, which was massively intense and moving, and which is why I trained then to become a sound therapist. And that was an amazing experience, and just blew me away. Totally unexpected. Was the first sound bath meditation that I ever went to, or gong bath. And I would class that as pretty spiritual. Well, actually, I did come out and say I've just found my religion.
What was it about?
I hadn't a clue. I hadn't a clue what I was going into. I actually asked, because it was at the Earth Song. We camp in circles, so it was my Earth Song family, and it was on my birthday, and it was the first Earth Song I ever went to. Went with my 3 little minions on my own, and I had no expectations about what it was going to be, and I landed with the most wonderful circle, who were so giving of themselves and helpful to a mum on her own with 3 kids. And it was the day of my birthday. The gong bath was actually, both sets of it were full. And somebody said to me, Fiona, you take my place because I've got something else I've got to do. And I was like, really? Are you sure? And she said, yeah. Go. So I said, but before I go, actually, how do I dress in this bath? And she said, oh, you're not getting into a bath. No, you just go as you are. You're lying on the floor. Just bring your bits and bobs to lie on the floor and make yourself comfortable. I was like, okay. So I lay down. This woman had, as you know, Chris, she has, gosh.
Yeah, I have
experienced. If not even more. Yeah, she comes with a whole truckload. I only have two of the big gongs that she would have. But anyway, so I was lying down, got myself comfortable. I think I had a sheepskin under me and a yoga mat and a blanket over me. And I was like, lovely. Closed my eyes, got all nicely settled. We started, I don't know how many minutes we were into it, maybe 15 or something. And suddenly I felt like she dropped a pebble into one of my chakras, if you're familiar with what they are, and it had these ripples. And I just opened my eyes and went, what? How did that happen? And she must have been standing about 20 feet away from me. And I thought, okay, maybe I just dreamed that. Like, I don't understand how she could be that far away from me. And I felt that. Closed my eyes. And a few minutes later, the same thing happened, but up higher. And I thought, I don't know what this is, but I like this magic. And that was it. I was like hooked. I just thought, wow, this is amazing. Being able to physically feel something through sound. And you're standing 20 foot away from me. She wasn't anywhere near me. Amazing. Was it spiritual? I would like to think it was. And I do remember I came out and I said, I think I've just found my religion. I can't get over how magical that was. And yeah, I went off to train to play Tibetan singing bowls, gongs, and I now hold regular ones. And I see that magic, and that magic is amazing to be able to gift and offer to people. As we need it probably more than ever at the moment. So
yeah, because Poppy asks, can you tell us more about sound healing? An example. How do you apply it? With your clients, for example.
I wouldn't do an awful lot of one-to-one sound healing, but I might incorporate it into another bodywork session. So as I said, I work with acupuncture and craniosacral therapy. I have one German lady who came to me. I've known her for a couple of years now, and she never had acupuncture and craniosacral together, and she experienced it and she loved it, and it's like, oh my God, such magic is this. So she would have come to a couple of sound baths. So then one day I said, oh, well, I can play a few singing bowls, we can add that in. And she was like, oh, lovely. And then another day she said, oh, could I have the gong as well? And so she's lying on the table with acupuncture needles in, and I wheel in my gong and I play it for about 15 minutes, and it just brings you to a whole other dimension. But how does it work is the science behind it, and this is the understanding behind it. This is not how it is for everybody. Is that the vibrations of the instruments are the equivalent of our theta brainwave. So it's somewhere like our middle brainwave. Most people, not everybody, but most people will wake up in alpha, and hopefully, if you get into your deep sleep, you're in delta or gamma. So theta would be the brainwave you would be in if you practice regular meditation. If you did a repetitive action like knitting or crochet, if you're good at them, like if you get frustrated with them like I do, then you won't be in theta. Colouring would be another place, but a place where people would be very familiar with it is if you drive and you're comfortable with driving and experienced, and you're a little bit further down the road than you realised you were in your car, you've actually been in theta brainwave, because you're not focused. It's subconscious, and you're not focused on what you're doing. So when you attend a sound bath, you're bathed in the sounds of these instruments, this vibration. And what it does is it induces that theta in your body, in the cells. So all the squillion cells are all dancing around to theta, which is like they're having a theta disco. So within that, though, it only meets you where you're at, and that sounds very airy. So if you come through the door and you're charging through and you've got a lot on your mind and la 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 la, it might help you to sort all through that. Some people just fall asleep. Some people will have quite emotional release. Some people will actually get quite restless. There was one guy came once, and I didn't know before he came through the door. He'd had, I think it was an osteopath session the day before, and he had been worked on both his right shoulder and right hip. Quite the whole session had been about that. And in the sound bath, that's where he felt it. And I wow, isn't that amazing? So it just went into the cells and made things move and activate a little bit more. And a lot of people, not everybody again, but like about 95% of people would say that they sleep really well the night afterwards. And God, if it can do that for people, that's amazing. But yeah, I just find them amazing. Absolutely. And the feedback I get from people, and I felt it here. And one lady, she's really nice. She would say, oh my God, I was a turtle under the water. And I just went swimming around. I just thought, oh, I love it.
It's just, I'm going to make an appointment. I've had a few sound baths, and each time they've just been amazing. Just absolutely. And I can't describe them. But I've known where I was at one, and the facilitator asked anyone who's got pain or sore bits, whatever, just so Fiona was put up her hands, and she says, where's yours? And it might have been my knee or something. So then she comes down to each person wherever, and just does their sound, whatever she was using. And afterwards, the pain's gone. I mean,
no, it is. It's pretty awesome where it can touch. And like sometimes I would offer, now prior to last year, I would usually ask people at the end, I would place a bowl physically on their person, usually their abdomen, just because it's a kind of comfortable space for people to have it and for them to physically feel vibrations. And that's like amazing. That's another level. And then I have one big, what I call Big Mama F, and F is the note for the heart. You can put your feet into it. But a lovely one to do is what I call head down, bottoms up. And you put your head into it, and the vibration is all around your head.
Oh, wow.
And my eldest son is one of my best guinea pigs for anything that I train in. So one time he had his feet in that bowl. We put another one on his head, and he said they joined at his knees. And my kids would do sound bath sessions on me because I wouldn't, professionally, I shouldn't give them acupuncture needles. My eldest would do cupping on me, but the others would do sound bath sessions. It's lovely. And when they're asked, they'll be like, but then when they're in it, they're just like, oh yes, it's my little thing and I'm in charge and whatever. And it doesn't matter. The intention is the real important thing. But I find if and when I have done single or one-to-one sessions, it's a bit different. With acupuncture, there's a lot of questions. With craniosacral, there's usually a lot less. And if somebody came for a sound bath session, there's actually even a lot less. It's just a very basic kind of run through. But I would ask them what their intention for the session is. And I would play my instruments and I would focus on their intention. And usually something comes up at the end of it that I haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. And they will go, oh yeah, I know what you meant. Oh, thank you, Ag.
That's Ag. Highly recommend a Fiona-led sound bath. Not all facilitators are as generous as our Fiona. Pure magic. I agree with you, Mag. That's lovely. So, when would you say Druidry has supported you?
I suppose it's done for me is supported what I already kind of knew about myself. I knew I was a bit different. I knew I wasn't a hippie because some of them really irritated me. I knew I was a tree hugger, and I knew I liked nature and I was very drawn to it. And I do like ceremony. And I like the idea that there's freedom within it.
Yeah.
That it's not this strict dogma. So I found it's given me space to be myself.
Lovely.
More probably than I ever thought. So I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm that. And it's wonderful for that. And I've met some amazingly wonderful people. Yourself included.
Of course. That was a leading question as well.
Of course.
Would you say Druidry is something you are or something you do, or both?
I think it's something you are. Like, we're all drawn to whatever is innate in our system. I would like to think. You could drag me to a supermarket, but you'll find that I would like to leave after a short time, or a shopping centre or one of those places. But for some folk, that floats their boat. But I think it's something within you that you connect with the something within somebody else. Like I don't connect with every single grouping. Like I practice yoga and I love it. I find it really, and I know you don't like it, or it doesn't float your boat.
I do a little bit of yoga every day.
Yoga of the mind. Yoga of the face. But I know there are some amazing yogis out there, and there are some people who can twist themselves up like spaghetti, and that is to be admired. But what I love is to teach and to help people is the people that go, yoga is not for me. I can't do it. My body can't do that. I've been to a class and I couldn't get on. I go, let's go. So I've been doing a one-to-one yoga class with this lovely German lady for the last number of weeks. And her thing is her posture. And we're not doing 15 poses of a flow. Maybe she could do with that, but she's not there. I'm to help her find her awareness in her body. And that's an amazing thing to be able to do. Just focus on this teeny tiny little area in your body, but not the obvious one. I don't want you to pay attention to that one. So yeah, whereas Druidry is, it's all of that, because I can do yoga under a tree, can't I? I can do yoga on a beach. I can practice yoga while I'm gardening.
Well, it's not quite true that I don't like yoga. I did it for years, and I have a very good friend, Mary Ellen Brennan, who's a yoga teacher, and hers was always catering for the body itself. So if she had, I did both group and individual, but when I was pregnant, for example, I did yoga. So she would modify the poses for me, and she'd modify them for somebody with a bad back or a bad knee or whatever it is. So she paid attention to everybody in her class. It wasn't about being as flexible as spaghetti. I think that's a very good description. But it was about the best that you can do, and it's not about pain, And I really, really appreciated that. And my breathing really, really improved. I was a very shallow breather until I did yoga, and now I breathe. So the odd time I've been to, I remember I had to get an echocardiogram a few years ago, and the person's doing it says, now just take a big deep breath in. So I'm going.
And they're like,
she didn't mean that deep. She didn't quite say that, but it was like, I thought that's what she meant. And I was really tickled that, oh my God, I can really take a deep breath. But I knew it was way, way too long. I think she meant me to think of going, but it was just really, really funny. So I found it really, really helpful. But that thing about having a teacher like you are is that paying attention to the individual and what they need. And I think that's what's really, really important.
Well, and them connecting into their body. Like somebody, I remember that I had this lovely lady, she comes as a client, and she was lying face down to have cupping, and she said, but what way should I be lying? Like, what way should my head be? And I said, well, I have no idea. What feels comfortable to you? Like, we'll put this here, and if you want to adjust it. I don't know what's going to be comfortable for you. I'm not inside your body. And people are stunned when you answer like that, because I'm professional, but I don't know what will make you feel comfortable in this moment. And maybe today it's this way, and maybe tomorrow it's another way, So I suppose Druidry has just brought that awareness into me in a way that maybe, I suppose now I garden with a slightly different perspective or intention or that kind of thing.
How do you do it differently now?
I have more awareness around it.
Go on.
And I don't know, tuning into the nature that's around me, the animals, the plants, a little bit differently, maybe. I've never really thought about it before, actually, until now. I don't really have words on it as such. I might do, but not right now.
That's wonderful. Do you have a daily practice? Or a regular practice, I mean.
Well, for the last number of weeks I do, because my puppy wakes me up early. So I go out at 5 a.m. and the two of us talk to a few plants together. He chews them, I talk. I'm never a person for sticking myself with routine, so it could change slightly depending on, and that's another thing. It's like my yoga practice can change depending on how my body is feeling. Sometimes I want to do restorative practice. So sometimes if I'm in my clinic, I will always have my candles lit. Like I was saying to you earlier on, I'm not against all gods being incorporated. So I have Ganesh beside my Bridget's candle that was lit from the perpetual flame. And it's something that I have passed on to lots of other people. And I would have seasonal offerings on that. I have a little altar on my window at work. So that will change. I actually picked a daisy on my way to work the other day, shoved it behind my ear and realized until the end of the day that it was still there. And I had seen a few clients. And when I did something, I went, oh, it's still there. So that's in front of my Bridget's candle right now, near Lord Ganesh.
Lovely. Just Sandy says this, Druidry is what we are before we know what it is. As we get older and find out about the Druid path, then we find we're home. So Druidry is what we are, and once we learn more, then it becomes what we do to enhance what we are.
Yeah, that would be more succinct than I am.
Thank you, Sandy. That was lovely. Do you have a special or a favorite sacred site?
There's a few, but one that's local to me that I really, really like it's known as Eagle's Rock, or it's the Cave of St. Coleman, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I just love it. It's at the foot of the Burren.
Okay.
It's on the Gort side, we'll say, because there's lots of amazing sacred sites out there. And you pull up at a gate, and there's, I don't know, maybe it's a 2K walk in, and you walk through the Burren landscape, which is, it's quite, for some people you go, gosh, it's a bit boring. boring. There's these big slabs of limestone rock, the craigs. There's a stone wall along the edge of the road, and even within the walking up to the site itself. And then you come to, it's like you walk into this meadow and up a little hill, and it's filled with these Oxide Daisies. It's actually my screensaver on my laptop. And you come to this height, and then there's these hawthorns. And it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of interesting. What's happening here? And then you walk a little bit further, come over the knob of the hill, and there's this hawthorn whole area it comes up, and it's at the foot of this hill. Go through, follow the path, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of this little area. So this saint lived in this cave. There's the remnants of a church, but there's a river that runs down beside it. And I just love it. It's like this little glen within these hawthorn trees, and it's like a little fairy enchantment or something. And I would go up there and collect well water. And I've played on the stones beside it. I've done a bit of yoga beside it. I've taken loads of people up there. There's wild garlic goes up there. And he is that saint was the the founder of the monastic site Kilmacduagh, which is just outside of Gort, which has one of, I think it's 3 of the full remaining round towers of Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's lovely, and that's another lovely place actually. But yeah, he walked till his belt fell. That's what God told him apparently. But he was also starving, so I'd wonder if there was a few things going on there. Maybe he had a bit too much wild garlic and went a bit. Maybe it has a effect. But it's amazing what God can tell you to do. So yes, I know that's no disrespect to anybody. So yes, apparently he had a mouse as a friend and a fly. A fly helped him read a story. A mouse came along and nibbled his ear to get up. But somehow within all of this, he had a manservant. He was also a cousin of this Goira that I mentioned before, who has Dun Goira in Kinvara. And there's the story of the flying plates. Have you ever heard that one?
No, tell me.
So St. Coleman was on the brink of starvation, and Goira was in his castle having a feast. And apparently because maybe a little bit arrogant, said, if this food is, better for somebody else, let the plates fly. And the plates got up and they flew.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
So, yeah, St. Coleman then had an apparition where God told him, or a dream, that to walk, and where his belt fell down. Now, apparently he was starving at this point, so maybe he didn't have to walk for too long. But it's a fair hike, at the point of which when he would have been in Ireland, which I believe was about the 5th century, it would have been a massively forested area. So there's all these St. Coleman's wells then formed this walk that he made, yeah. And then where his belt fell down was Kilmacduagh. And that site still remains. And that's another wonderful site, actually. It's really nice. It's on 2 sides of the road.
Actually, it just reminds me, I did a hand fasting for a few years ago at one of the St. Coleman's wells. And I don't know if it was the same. And we had to walk in, and there was a church and a well. Is that the one?
It could be, yeah.
A ruined church. I didn't know. Can't remember that. It doesn't.
Okay. It's right on the edge of the Burren, like the Galway side of the edge of the Burren.
Yeah. Okay, fascinating. I love the idea of the fly, obviously helping him.
Read,
like when, what do you call this? A karaoke when the balls underline the words.
It's the laser pointing. Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. Are there any other sacred sites? Ones that maybe that you can mention?
Well, I would have a very special graw for the Black Fort out in
Innismore and the Aran Islands. Yes, it's
one of my favourite places ever. If anybody's ever been to Innismore, you might have been to Dunangus, which is fairly fantastic in itself. But doing the Cahir, the Black Fort, not as many people go there. And actually to walk up to it, it's all quite loose shale. Not that it's terribly hard, but it wouldn't invite as many, so therefore it's quieter. But there's just this, oh my God, the stunningness of being up there, standing on the wall, just looking out on the Atlantic for as far as the eye can go. And then you come down off and there's this like little goat path and you can walk along the cliff. Oh, well, I used to live, I used to live out in Innismore for 10 years and my father's originally from there. So it's a very special place for me, and I've walked every inch of it.
I have been there with Alwyn Pendred, and there's a beautiful souterrain and magic to go in. Have you been into the souterrain? Yes.
Mm.
It's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah, I would prefer that to Dún Aengus.
Yeah, Dún Aengus, but like when I was a kid, Dún Aengus was still as it probably was in the time of W.B. Yeats's father held a big dinner up there, and they had to horse up all the stuff like horse and cart. So when I was little, it was a goat path that went up there. It was a quite narrow, you walk one foot in front of the other. And the chevaux de frise, a lot of them were still standing. Whereas, so now they've made it into a gravel path because of the enormity of people that were going up there for health and safety reasons. So Dún Aengus, there was still, like when I was 7, I remember there was people came to Inishmore that were from Japan. It was still a popular place, but not as popular as now. So yeah, I suppose I think of Dún Aengus a little bit like a zoo animal, and they offer up themselves to protect all the rest. Because if everybody went to the Black Fort like they do to Dún Aengus, they'd have to change that as well. And there's many sites on the island that like Dún Ochel. I sat up there on one full moon with a high vis jacket on and a friend of mine told me he could see me, and I was like, oh, the view. Galway Bay on a full moon night, me sitting up there on my own. Nice.
Yeah, it's lovely Galway Bay on the moon because you see it across the bay on the water. It's just incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, on a fine night, of course, not in maybe November with a howling gale.
Yeah, there's somebody, Anne Beer. I visited the whole area of Gort and the Burn in 1982 by bike from Galway. Bless you. It was so wonderful. We also stayed on Inishmore. What a magical place. Thank you for all these beautiful memories.
Oh, look at you. Fair play to your elbow coming on a bicycle.
Yeah, I mean, I now have an e-bike for those kind of journeys. I certainly would, because I always think of Clare being so hilly. And then, of course, I discovered since I started cycling around here, North Kilkenny is very hilly too. Where else would you like to visit? Did you have
in the world?
Sacred sites as opposed to, yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, recently there were some areas up around Northern Ireland. I think there was one of the islands that you had been to last year that you put up some pictures of. That
Tory Island.
Yeah. And there was another lady put up a picture, and it's usually an online thing where I would find, oh, I like the look at that. It was Boa. I liked the look of that.
Yes, I was there last year. Boa Island, where you've got the Janus figure.
Yeah. And like the Hebrides has always appealed to me, mainly because there's something about the Hebrides, because I studied music up until I did like the equivalent of junior O-levels, junior cert here in Ireland. Not that I'm a musician. I'm not a musician, by the way, which is mad considering I'm a sound therapist. But anyway, I have a great appreciation. But there's a piece of music by Mendelssohn called the Hebrides Overture. And I actually, back in the old days, do you remember back in the old days when they had cassettes? And yes. I recorded it on one cassette many times. So I could just listen to it. It's all violin. Oh, the sound of the waves. And I would love to go to the Hebrides.
I've been on to Staffa Island, where Fingal's Cave is. So from the Isle of Mull. And as the boat comes in, they put on Fingal's Cave and they blast it. And you see the hexagonal columns in the cave that just match the ones on the Giant's Causeway.
Okay, yes.
So it's the same rock formation. So they say Fingal, this Fingal, that he used to run along, or could take a jump from the Giant's Causeway over to Staffa.
Yeah, well, I knew that connection, but I didn't know the where exactly. Okay, so yeah, I finally got to go and see the Giant's Causeway only, a few years ago. It's on my to-do list as well. But yeah, no, you always find loads of interesting places, and I know there's a fort up in Donegal. The name eludes me, but it has great.
Green out of Olyak. Green out of Olyak. Yeah. And that's beautiful too. Except it's modern, as in it's not ancient, like Dún Aengus. How old is Dún Aengus?
Oh, well, modern. I like your definition of modern. Is that last 3,000, 5,000 years?
No, it's much newer than that. It's Iron Age as opposed to Bronze Age or Neolithic. So that's what I mean as modern. Yes, hi Ruth, lovely to see you. Ruth Marshall on Greenon of Olliok. It's quite an impressive fort as well.
Yeah. I got to go to Queen Maeve's, Karen. That was quite, I loved it.
Knocknaray. That was, well, someone says, do you have a bucket list of sacred sites to visit?
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a few, yeah. And then there's the beautiful yew that's down in Killarney.
It is, it's wonderful. I've been there. And actually, you talked about an Irish yew. I went with Pat Booker it was after the restrictions were lifted. And we went to Florence Court, which is up in, I think it's Fermanagh. Forgive me, I haven't got my county wrong. And that is where the original
came from.
Yeah. So, and then talking about, attempted to see the Well of Shigash on Sunday because it was Trinity Sunday. However, it was closed. But I went up to Knocknaachton or Chochnaachton. Necton was one of Boan's husbands, and up on a hill, and there were 5 barrows there, and it was just lovely to see that. And I heard the cuckoo. Oh
wow! Summer is definitely here then.
And I don't hear them in Kilkenny. I've heard the cuckoo in the burn. That's when I've heard it easily. And then I was in Wicklow today, and I was in a beautiful stone circle and up on a mountain, and heard the cuckoo again and skylarks. And it's like, oh, I haven't heard these in a while. So, because Wicklow, you have cuckoos in Wicklow, and you have them in Sligo, and you have them in the Burn and in Kildare, but not in Kilkenny, unfortunately. Where I grew up,
rent is too expensive in Kilkenny.
I know. But I mean, I grew up with cuckoos. It was like, oh yeah, there's a cuckoo. It's summer. But now it's they're rarer and rarer. So
they're staycationing.
That's right. Tell me, what's the most reckless thing you've ever done?
I've already hearing. Does it have to be legal?
Just something that you're willing to disclose.
Goodness. What is the most reckless thing I've ever done? Does I have to include potential physical danger to myself?
It's whatever you think was reckless. I mean,
I've done some pretty daft things where I've gone, I'm just going to do it anyway. I'll see what the outcome is. And I could be in the middle of it going, should I maybe plan this a little bit better? I don't even know if this is particularly reckless, really. I went to Mexico years ago before my kids were born. I was meeting up with friends over there. And I booked my flight and all that. And I arrived in Madrid for a few days of a visit. My sister lived there at the time. And it was only when I arrived in Madrid that I went to look about me getting actually into Mexico, as in I didn't have the visa or anything. And it was only on the flight that I found out that you filled it in, right? But then I got there and my friends hadn't arrived down from North America, and I ended up staying in the house of a friend of a friend. But first I arrived in Mexico City Airport, and I went to the desk and booked this plane to bring me to this city that actually, in terms of it by plane, it was about 3 hours. And when I got to the desk to check in, they took my bag. And then I went to go and get on the plane. You know, you go through passport security and all of that. And I got as far as the boarding gate to discover that the plane had left, but they had checked me in. I'd gone through passport security and all this. So we're talking pre 9/11 now or anything. And I came back out, and I went to the desk to find my bag, and I went back through security, back up through all the way back around. It was one of those where you just go, ah. So I was going wandering all anyway. So they kept on my big bag because I had a big rucksack, and they tried to tell me it was all my fault because I didn't get to the gate on time. And I went, what? You sold me the ticket. She booked me in. How could it be my fault? So anyway, they booked me on the one in the morning. So I spent the night in Mexico City Airport. I don't know that it was particularly reckless, but it probably wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done. And I I'd kind of fall, doze off to sleep, and I'd wake up, and there was this bloke who'd always be 6 feet away from me. So I'd get up and I'd move somewhere else. And then, because the flight was like, I don't know, whatever time in the morning. And I figured, well, by the time I go and find somewhere and get myself set up for the night and get back to the airport, I'm only going to have a few hours. I'm probably not going to rest much more. So yeah, I spent the whole night in Mexico City Airport, got on a plane the next day to go and stay with this guy who I'd never met before, and stayed with his family while I waited for my friends to come back or to meet me from North America. But it was the most bizarrely wonderful experience. They were such a lovely family. The mother really didn't have much English. Now, the son did. He had spent time in London. And his sister had spent time in San Francisco. But the parents, well, the dad had a bit, but the mum didn't have any. But she was the one who was around the house the most. And, of course, I was a bit knackered after my flight and whatever. So I used to sit on the couch with her and watch these novellas. And nobody would sit with her and watch these novellas, but we would sit together and watch these novellas. They're so bad, they're good. Yeah. And she was delighted. And it wasn't particularly reckless. There was elements of it were particularly reckless. But I travelled around Mexico for about 3 months and came back to their house again. And I was my friends and I, we parted company at one point. 4 people travelling intently in a Jeep you reach a point after about 2 months. Well, we did anyway. So I went around by myself for about a month, and maybe that was reckless. But I was mindful. I travelled with a small, tiny backpack actually, and I had this Mexican blanket that I still have that I wore as a coat. It was my blanket. It was my pillow. It was everything, and I still have it actually. I use it to sit on to do my sound bath. I had to take it out of the house because people would knacker it on me. But so after I had done my tour, and I went back through Mexico City, and I spent a week there, and I told these girls that I was in a hostel with, that I wasn't going to go to Teotihuacan, so till I could pronounce the name, and it took me about 3 days to get my around it, and it's not that hard once you know how, of course, like everything. That was an amazing sight. And I went back to the town of Guadalajara to meet up with my friends again, and they weren't there for another brief period, and it was over Christmas, and this family just invited me in. We had this, she made this mole sauce, so I don't know if you're ever familiar with this, chocolate chili.
Oh,
to die for. But she took about 3 days to make it, and I asked for the recipe, and she'd say me 5 onions. That would be that day. That's all she'd give me, 5 onions. Oh, okay. And the next day, 6 chilies. And she made, and it was beautiful. We ate dinner at like midnight. And so it was a recklessness in that I had no idea what I was entering into. I didn't know these people and whatever else. But, I mean, I'm one of those people. My sister would say that I'm a bit daft, my older sister in particular, because she's a little bit more controlled. Whereas I go, I have no idea what's going to happen. Sure, I'll find out when I get there. Where are you going? I have no clue.
You have that openness and curiosity to different experiences.
Well, I don't. There are people in the world that, we all don't particularly resonate with, and we don't like. But 90% of people have a good heart and come from the right place. And if you were stuck somewhere, they dig you out. We most of us will do that for most people. And I have found that if I go around the globe, and I've been in many places. And I've been in places where I have been on my own, and I've been in places where I've been with other people. But I've had that sense of, I'm not stupid. I'm quite grounded, a bit daft, but quite grounded. I don't go around with a big expensive camera lens on me. I would like to say that I'm cheery enough with people, and I get that and reciprocated. And I've been blessed, whereas there will be other people going, you did what? You went where? On your own? Are you mad? I didn't know any different.
What was it? When ignorance is bliss, it's folly to be wise. But I think it's those that willingness to enter into the unknown and set forth, not quite to seek your fortune, but to experience what life has to offer, and also that trusting the universe, trusting that all will be well.
Yeah, and I would often get in my car to go somewhere, and I'll call her Governor Google would send me going, oh, you have to turn left. And I go, yeah, I don't like that left turn. I'm going to keep going and see what happens. And my family would know me for, I'm up, get lost. I say, no, I don't get lost. I go on an adventure. It's a totally different thing. And I discover most wonderful places from my adventuring. So one time I was going to actually see my dad. So it's a well-known route, shall we say. I wasn't there 5 minutes, not word of a lie. The phone rang, my father's phone rang. And he answered and he said, yeah, she's here. And I went, don't tell me she's phoning to make sure that I got here.
Yeah.
What did you think was going to happen? Well, who knows with you, Fiona?
So what has been your greatest achievement?
Oh, Gavori dearing. Is this the bit where I'm supposed to? God help us. I invoke all of them, you know. I don't mind which God. It's like when I said to my aunt when I was studying for exams, for acupuncture, I said, you say a prayer for me now. And she said, but you don't believe. And I said, but I believe that you believe. So therefore, your belief is what's needed. I don't care what God anybody prays to, as long as they've got the right intention. So what has been my greatest achievement? I suppose in a way, most people would say it's my 3 children. They're such wonderful beings. If they don't turn into axe murderers, we'll be blessed. But I think space. I'm very proud of this space that I have created that is I'm here about 3.5 years. I took it on because the shared space I was using, couldn't get it at the times that I wanted. I love it. I love being in it. It's filled with art that I love. People love it when they walk in. They just feel automatically relaxed. But like that, I can remember I was driving up the road one day, looking up at the building, well, on the day, just around the time that I decided to take it. And I was like, oh, it's going to be my space. I'm excited like this. Half an hour later, I was driving the opposite direction. Terror. Oh my God, what have I done? But like I said about adventuring, I just go, what's the worst can happen? I'd regret it if I didn't do it, but who knows what magic can happen when you do something.
And that can be reckless, but it's like, you know, we don't gain anything without risk.
Absolutely. And I would say the same thing to my children, you know, if they say, but I don't know, and I don't, and I couldn't, and I go, who knows? What's the worst somebody can say? No. That's okay. That's only a 50-50 chance. They might say yes. And what magic could that be?
Yeah, it's, you know, when somebody, I'd love to do it, but I'm afraid to say, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen if they say no? Then nothing has changed.
Mm.
What might happen if they said yes? Then everything can change, you know. So you've lost nothing if you've asked and you've got to know things are the same. Do you have any regrets?
Gosh, I'm all of a sudden getting very emotional. Well, I can't change this one. It's one thing, my mum, when she was sick in hospital, that I didn't talk to her more. But I was young and foolish. I know. I was only 14, so I know I'm being a bit silly and daft, sorry. But yeah, it's always something I go, I didn't have anything to say, but I didn't know her well enough as a person. But yeah, I'd like to hope I've instilled in my children that they know me well enough.
At different times, I would like to think too that my kids know me better than, although my mother's still alive, but my father. And it's like, it's your adult, mature, wise self thinking of the 14-year-old and if only. And I think, you know, as a child, it would be lovely to have known your mother as an adult. You know, it's that, and to have had a relationship. And I think, and there's nothing you can do about it because you obviously did the best you could. Given what you have as 14, or I'm just thinking of myself as a 14-year-old.
Oh God, sure, I was a gormless twat.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be one thing. But yeah, I suppose it's because it wasn't long after that she passed away. So, but she lives on, as I say to my kids. She's there in me. She's there in you. She's probably in my thoughts in some shape or form. Maybe not every day, but at least a few times a week. When I garden, I feel very close to her.
Was she a gardener?
Yeah. Yeah,
oh,
she was green-fingered.
Somebody says this from Ricky, not remotely silly or daft. That's the thing about regrets. Things are always better with hindsight. I agree with you, Ricky.
Mm. Well, I like the Frank Sinatra regrets, too few to mention. So, but yeah, that's a big one. But I suppose it's a memory that's stuck in the mind.
Yeah, and Gabriella says, I think this is one of the beauty of the child-parent relationship. Deep inside, all children love their parents, no matter how well they know them. And I think that's so true.
Mm.
And children can love their parents in spite of them, you know.
Oh, yeah. Look, I thoroughly believe you can love somebody, but you don't necessarily always have to like them. But I suppose for me at that moment to realise that I could have talked to her about anything. She'd had a stroke, you see, so she wasn't able to talk. So I could have just held her hand and I could have just blathered. It didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter so long as I did it from the right intention. And yeah, that's something that I regret, that I sat there not knowing what to say. So yeah, I'd like to think that I've instilled in my, like I know a few years ago I said to them, so what's my favourite Chinese food? What's my favourite this? What do I like? How do I make my coffee? You know, and they were like, what do you want to know? I said, I want you to know what I do. I want you to know.
But there's also something about sitting with the silence. Because I know when Howard was dying, Quayla, when she was 13, and she just sat with them. And sometimes there wasn't anything to say. And it's your presence. And you know, he said, I didn't know what to say. Perhaps, well, there aren't any words.
True, yeah. I hadn't thought about it like that.
The fact that you actually sat with her as a 14-year-old, sitting with your mother who'd had a stroke, you know, that you actually gave her the time. You gave her your time and your presence. And I imagine that sustained her, you know, in her last weeks, you being there. And some people saying really nice things. You can still talk to her, Fiona. She's there. And then this is... Here, I'll let you read it yourself because it makes me emotional. Can you read that?
Mm. Oh, yeah. Thank you. It's very sweet. I did not expect this to be the outcome from Tea with the Druid. Thank you.
This isn't Tea with the Druid.
Helps me enormously.
Fiona, this isn't Tea with the Druid.
I'm sorry. Come, let's go.
I've done that a few times myself. It's a great tribute.
It's not that, okay?
He's left an indelible mark on all of us. But I know from having as a nurse, you know, being with people who were dying, for example, and seriously ill, that actually it's your presence. Or when somebody says, somebody's bereft or bereaved and I didn't know what to say, so I didn't talk to them. It's like, no, there's nothing to say. It's to be. And the fact that you're there, which is a wonderful gift for your mother, actually.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody, because that's actually given me a whole new perspective. And I would think of her very often. Talk to her maybe is the wrong way to put it, but she'd most definitely be forefront in my mind when I'll be out with my plants and pooching.
That's lovely.
And my godmother, who is a really beautiful lady, she said to me once years ago, I think I was in my early 20s, and I hadn't seen her at that point for a while, and she said to me, oh, you're very much like your mother. If not, why not? And I thought, oh, I am? Oh, great. And I realised, yeah, she was, you know, if not, why not? She was a devout Catholic, but that would question things.
That's beautiful. Then Shanti says, sometimes words aren't necessary. Energy is one of the most powerful and universal ways of communicating for those who are just willing to listen. So that's very interesting. And then Anya O'Neill, she had a similar experience with her dad, but she believed he knew how she felt about him.
Yeah, I suppose it's that awkwardness of a teen, isn't it?
Oh, I remember it. Yes. Yeah. It takes a deep level of friendship or connection to find another person with whom you can comfortably share silence. That's Ricky. Oh, there's wonderful comments here. Dean White, I remember sitting with my nan in a hospice and we didn't really speak much, but it was such a peaceful and loving time. Yeah. Thank you for your comments. These are really lovely, really, really beautiful.
No, I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. I hadn't thought about it like that. I suppose all I could remember is sitting there like an awkward, speechless twat, and I should have been doing or saying something. Yeah.
I always find it a compliment if a teenager comes and talks to me, or not even that. If they even greet me, it's like, because they're so caught up in their
very greetable, Eimear.
Huh?
You're very greetable.
Well, teenagers are, that awkwardness. I remember it. So if somebody actually comes and somebody went and sat with me, I'd be going, "Oh my God, that kid is giving me time and attention." So anyway, so what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my spirit of adventure.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as a hindrance. And I'm grateful to have courage to go, fuck it, excuse my French, I'm gonna give it a go. It's not French, whoops. That I'm just gonna bugger it, I'm just gonna give it a go, and I'll bloody well see what happens.
Wonderful.
Maybe I'm a bit stubborn in that as well, but who knows what magic can happen on this wonderful day.
Yeah, and there's loads of potential for magic, even in these challenging times.
Oh, look, there's something to be grateful for every day, regardless of how small, how deemed how small that is. I would do a lot of workshops, and usually there's a yogic theme to them. But I've begun to bring in more druidic elements. But I would have always had the Bridget part of the flame, where I would have shared it. But I would do mindfulness, and I'll be talking about being grateful, and it's one of the simplest tasks, one of the simplest things to do for ourselves. But we can create it to be this lofty kind of thing. And I believe very much in, if you make things simple, you will incorporate them into your life. So I find to do my grateful list and be grateful in the morning before I get out of bed, which you might think, well, you haven't done anything yet. And I go, I'm grateful for my duvet. Oh, I'm grateful for this glass of water beside my bed. I'm grateful for the coffee I'm about to have. And they're tangible. Whereas I'm grateful for the peace and serenity, or it's like sometimes, where the hell is that? It's not tangible. So I like lofty ideas, but I like to bring them down to a simple form, because I think that's important for people.
It is the simplicity. Normally I don't do gratitude first thing in the morning. I would do later on, but it's really interesting. Practicing gratitude first thing in the morning sets you up for a hopeful day. That, and I think that's really important. I mean, I've always what am I grateful for the day? I was with two friends in a stone circle today, and we would say, we'll do a round, let people speak. And of course it says we always come around to what we're grateful for. And that's exactly what we were doing. And often I'm grateful for the day that happened. But that notion of expressing gratitude first thing sets you up, I think. I think it's something to pay attention to setting you up for the day ahead.
Oh, I think so, yes. I function better early in the morning. I can be a night owl, but I definitely have my most clearest thoughts, and can achieve, and I don't mean it in a I have to go out and take over the world, but like in little jobbings that I would like to do. So, I might plant something up in the garden while out at 5 a.m. with the dog, because there's nothing else to detract me. So I go, now I could do that. Oh, great.
Wow. I'm not a morning person, and I'm a night owl. But I do get that. Again, I come back to the simplicity of it. So I heard the skylark today, and I heard the cuckoo. And last night in another stone circle, I heard a strange bird. I've recorded it. I've never heard it before. Now I need to go and find out.
Investigate
that sound. But the simplest of things, the sunshine, that, or you see a flower, or you've noticed one of the flowers in your garden has just burst into, or on your window box has come into, those tiny things. I think it's a great.
Yes, I'm often to be found talking to my plants, going, "Oh, look at you! You've come on! Here you are! How nice to see you!"
I do the same. It's
a lady I know. She's a wonderful garden. She's got the most amazing garden. She gave me some evening primrose plants, and
the perfume.
Not even the perfume, but the flower. It's never ending, man. I was like, oh my God, they're still going. I can't believe this. I was in her picture going, oh my God. I'd walk past it in the morning and go, oh, you're still here. Oh, wonderful. My children are like, get into the car. Will you just drive us to school? Please shut up. You crazy woman. You're talking to a plant. But yeah.
That's so beautiful. So
They are gorgeous.
What gives you joy? Apart from your evening primrose flower.
My evening primroses wonders for me. What gives me joy? My coffee in the morning brings a sense of stability to my day. A bit of a space to be creative and to be, not to just be mother, therapist, just to be me. That brings me joy. Sometimes the decadence of lying down on a treatment couch in the middle of the day. Oh, you wild beast. You know, it's like, well, we don't get up to lie down, do we? So it's a lovely thing. I like a hot shower. I'm a fan. That brings me joy. A not hot shower does not bring me joy.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah, and that creative process. I mean, I'm a fartist, not an artist. You know, I fart around at different things. But yeah, I've dipped my toe in lots of different things over the years. But acrylic pouring is something that I did a workshop in a few years back, and I got really enthusiastic about it and love it. So I'm hoping to do some tiles for our new house.
Okay.
But I just have to get my space sorted a little bit better.
You know how the Bardic grade is about, enhancing creativity and developing it and exploring your creativity. Have you noticed any change? And where do you get the imas from, or the awan?
I might see something like I saw that person made the spiral. I didn't make mine like they did, but I took the idea of it. It might be an external thing like that, or I could be walking down the road and I go, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't be a person. I used to do an awful lot of ceramics years ago. So I would have an idea in my head of what the pot would look like, but by the time I was finished, it didn't look like anything, that image in my head. So I'm actually a bit of a worker on site person. So it adapts and changes. So not so much the paper and pen, and that would be my adventurous side coming out, as opposed to my non-planning side coming out. So it can be from anything and anywhere. It could be from something somebody said to an idea that I saw somewhere, from nature, or incorporating things together. Mm-hmm. Mixed media, that really appeals to me. If I was doing like almost a 2D, I would like to have texture in it. I like that sense. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. What's been the biggest challenge you've had that you've overcome?
Probably being a lone parent. That has been a challenge. I guess I'm maybe 12 years, maybe. My eldest son is now 17, so give or take around then. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of learning. There's been a lot of crying. There's a lot of anger. And there has to be a lot of forgiveness and a lot of letting go. It did take me a while to get to that stage. I'd say it's probably about 6 or 7 years ago now when I kind of got to that stage and stopped having conversations in my head, or arguments in my head, actually, because it never panned out quite the way you say in your head. So yeah, and adapting and learning to accept the frustration that being a lone parent. So I didn't take over my clinic till my twins went to secondary school, because then that would have freed a little bit more of my day and just made life a little easier. They also were going to school in the same town in Gort, where my clinic is. So yeah, there was that bit of sitting like a chicken on an egg sort of idea. But then, they've been my best guinea pigs. They've been, I wouldn't quite go and say they've been my best teachers, but they certainly have made me bloody grow up, probably.
Okay.
That's not such a bad thing. And yet still, I'm not all fully grown.
No, that's a life's work. That's a life's work.
Oh, there's always the little imp and the glint.
Is there anything you'd change about your life?
Well, I'd love if my mother wasn't dead, but about my life. I think I possibly might have had more of a productive time in my 20s. I see now when I look back, because I'm I'm almost at the big 50. Well, I will be next year. I see that after my mum died, I was the eldest at home of 4, so I was number 3, but I was the eldest at home, and I had to just pull up my big girl britches and crack on with it. So I was quite mature in a way. Like, people would be wondering what they wanted to wear to the disco, and I'd be wondering if I had carrots for dinner. And that's not a woe is me. It's just the way it was. And I see, though, that in my 20s now, when I look back, I went through quite a grieving process. I had this kind of self-saboteur. It was almost like I was trying everything to do away with myself, I not consciously. But I see now that I was pushing a lot of limits with my body physically and possibly even mentally. And I could have just spent that time a little better. And it would have been a wonderful time to study a lot of wonderful things. And perhaps if I had found things, like I had done a little bit of yoga, but nothing to the extent that I have in the last probably 11 years. So, but maybe I just wasn't there to do it. I did do art. I did a lot of ceramics when I lived in London, and it brought me a lot of joy, and I really enjoyed it. But had I gone more into that, I possibly would have grounded myself a little bit earlier. But then on the other token, I wouldn't be where I am today. I would not have gone to Earthsong. Maybe I'd have probably be living in Bali and living it up differently. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you change anything, it has a massive knock-on effect, like dominoes, no?
It does indeed. It does indeed. And I suppose that question it was a very open. Sometimes it's about changing. You can't change the past. Maybe you could if you could. And then, is there something you change about the future or change about the present in order to make another change?
Well, I think there's always changes to be made. I think I don't rush as headlong into things that I would have necessarily. I'm still quite the adventurer, and go, why not? But now I might sit and think with something before I'd go doing it, and then I might have changed my mind, or slightly had changed of heart on it. Not totally, but I might approach it in a different way. And I think that has come with maturity.
And just Gabriella says, this is really interesting. I always thought 20s are for testing limits, expanding, forcing, pushing, semi-close to destruction, but not quite there. And I think the thing is, you're talking about the semi-close to destruction, but you just don't quite get there. You survive it. And I think
yeah.
Except
I was in London in my 20s, and I loved every moment of it.
Oh, brilliant.
They couldn't leave me on my own at a bus stop because they'd find me talking to somebody.
Oh, bless you. That's lovely. Is there a person in your life that you admire?
Oh, gosh, there's lots of people I admire for different reasons. But recently, actually, because it came up in conversation recently, one person I admire massively is my eldest son, actually.
Really?
And the reason being that, particularly because it came up in conversation with somebody only a few days ago, I suppose he was bullied at primary school, and he didn't have the most pleasant of experiences. And it'd be one of those things I wish I had changed his school a little bit earlier, but I didn't. Anyway, when he went to secondary school, he was in the same year as some of these people as previous school, and there was one of these kids who shall remain nameless, and on their first day of doing woodwork, the teacher was obviously laying down the "I'm in charge here, nobody else is," and he went off to go and get the roll. And as he walked past this kid made some smart aleck comment, which be in keeping with his character. And when my son was relaying the story to me, he said, and he gave out to him, and I said, "Oh, I like that guy. I don't know who he is, but I like him." And my son said, "What are you talking about? So-and-so, he's fine." And I went, "Fine? Him? You must be joking me." And after all the bloody he caused, and I'd be sitting on your bed and you'd be crying and whatever else. Anyway, it was about 24 hours later, I realised my son had forgiven him and had let it go. And it had happened to him, not me. And I thought, wow, if you can let it go, then I can let it go.
Wow.
At that moment, I realised my son possibly had a little bit more maturity in that than I had. And so he holds no malice.
That's impressive, because then he's no longer trapped by it or held by it or controlled by it, that he can let that go.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the key to forgiveness. It's about letting it go, not condoning it, but letting it go. It no longer has a hold on you.
Well, it doesn't go round, because it goes round and round in your head otherwise, you know. And I remember treating a woman a few years ago, and she had a scenario within her family, and she was ruminating. And, you know, not to say, let her go and stop thinking about her, because that's easy to say, you know. I just said, I don't think she pays enough rent to be in your head. And she
went, I like that expression.
Oh, that's good. And I said, yeah, well, until she starts paying the rent, don't let her in your head.
I like that. Thank you. That's very, I like that. Any influential person in terms of, you know, in history or writers or that influence you?
I don't know that they influence me per se in direct way, but like the likes of Queen Maeve of Connacht, you know, I would have grown up, and it's a thing of, my dad would have been coming from where he came from. He was heavily influenced by his area. I would have grown up in a household where, you know, Celtic mythology, and I would have read them all when I was little. I loved the character of Queen Maeve of Connacht, strong and powerful. Does that make her an ardent feminist? I don't know what that means. Do you know? I don't mean I don't know what that means. What I mean is, do you have to be in a box? Can you not just be strong and be who you are? Do you have to be a something? So yeah, she would most definitely be. Gráinne Whale. Oh yeah. She had cojones on her cojones, and she had no cojones.
No, she had ovaries. So would you just tell our viewers who Gráinne Whale was?
She's the pirate queen. She had a castle off the west coast of Ireland, Clare Island, but she would have attacked Spanish boats that would have come around the west coast bringing wine and supplies into Galway. There was a very strong connection between Spain and Galway, and she would have raided them, basically. But my most impressive thing about her was she sailed up the Thames to meet Queen Elizabeth when she wanted her head, to say, okay, let's tango, girl. So yeah, and I suppose even Queen Elizabeth, fair play to her elbow, she was a pretty powerful woman. So yes, some women there, isn't there?
And Gráinne Whale went back to Ireland with her head.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sorry, yes. She had the cojones to go up there, that Elizabeth appreciated it. So two strong women met each other and said, okay.
And actually, that's quite interesting, because that was, you know, in Tudor times when people lost their heads very easily.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, she was, there's adventurous meets reckless.
Okay.
Yeah, and Gráinne Whale did not live the traditional wifely role. I mean, she went, I mean, you know this, she shaved her head to get on a boat at a young age. So, yeah, I think that kind of, look, I don't know, was she a great mother? I don't know. She had copious lovers, but I admire what I've heard of her story of strength. Yeah, that would impress me. And then there's like the likes of Tim Severn. God, it's all boaty people. I read his book. My dad's big into sailing, and I would have read his book St. Brendan when I was 12, and I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books. I was blown away with the stories of St. Brendan's voyage and them reenacting it. So they went from Ireland to the Faroes to Iceland, and just how they interpreted what happened to St. Brendan. And it's this animal hide boat, which is actually not very far from me right now. Which is another amazing spot. And it's that sense of adventure, I think. Because
the Voyage of St. Brendan is one of the three Imrama, those wonder voyages that we have in the text. There's the Voyage of Moel Dún, and then there's the Voyage of Bran Mac Fiall. And and you have St. Brendan. And of course, Tim Severin was like, okay, I'm going to see if this was possible.
Yeah. So he rebuilt the boat, basically.
We rebuilt the boat from cowhide. And there's something around, I don't know, it was from 39 cows. The skin of 39 cows were used. Something like that. Fascinating. So it was possible that St. Brendan could, in those days, have made that voyage if.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm sure, why not? And if what night, why not? There's probably nothing good on the telly that night. Since St. Brendan headed off.
So when you think of where we are today in this modern world, what concerns you?
Ooh, what concerns me? Like the wonderfulness of online, where I have connected with people. Like today, I was recording my interview for my radio show that I do, and that was a lady that I met online. But the potential of where it can go with negativity and I suppose the influence that can have over our young people, our teens, whatever. I think it's important to obviously learn that one can turn it off, but we as adults have to model that and reinforce it by telling them those kind of things. Like I would say to my own kids is, the internet is a wonderful tool, but that's what it is. It's how somebody uses it. So you could hand two different people two spades, and one digs a hole and plants a tree, and the other one hits a cat over the head. It's the same tool. So that kind of thing, I would be, and how focused people can get on it. It can be wonderful for connection, but it's important to turn it off. And I suppose for some, they're a complete and utter lack of conscious behavior towards our planet and things that they might do, from deforestation. I'm talking about big, massive companies. Like, look, I buy things in plastic because sometimes that's the only way you can get them. So why don't they stop it at that source rather than charging me more? And I've no problem with paying for recycling or landfill or whatever. But yeah, it's those kind of things would sometimes get on my wick, and how big companies, because you've got big money, can just get away with being arseholes. Seemingly no consequences. They would get on my wick.
So what gives you hope about the modern world?
I think people are inherently good folk. At least 95% of people have big hearts and generosity. And the internet, again, can be a wonderful tool for positivity. Like, I've held groups on it, and it can be a great way to connect. And like I said, the lady that I interviewed today, I came across her on Instagram, and I followed her, and I really liked what she did. So I asked her, as a small business owner, would you like to be on my interview? And you know what? That's the first time I've spoken to her in person.
Oh,
it was lovely. Like, we had a great chat. Like, the interview is about 20 odd minutes long, but we were on the phone for like an hour and a half. And eventually I had to go, well, I got to go now. And yeah, so it can be both a blessing and a curse. And I suppose when you have the likes of people who are willing to stand up, but we can't all be activists. We can't all be on the bow of a boat, banging a drum. There's lots of good people that are doing things in small ways that matter and change for a lot of people. And I think that gives me hope.
Yes, the generosity of people who do things quietly, without advertising. It's just that small.
I'm being grossly critical. When some company advertises and, if you buy this laptop off me, we will give 10% to charity. I go, why don't you just give the damn 10% to charity? Why do you need to advertise that you're doing it? Do you know? Or, just give them it because you can probably afford it anyway. Those kinds of things, yeah.
Are you a pacifist? Or is there a time when you'd fight back?
Once or twice in my life. I was involved in one riot in London.
Go on, tell us.
My brother said to me, and you were wearing a Dennis the Menace jumper. Like, they would spot you a mile away. I went, okay, I didn't think about what I was wearing. I didn't know I was going to get into a kerfuffle with a cop. But yeah, I got away with it. Yeah, no, if I believe strong, if some, like, I remember walking down a street in London in particular one time, and there was a homeless bloke, and this fellow was just giving him aggro for no reason. Just being an arse. I don't know why he ended up there. He was a young fellow. He was probably a few years younger than me at the time. And so I just bought in and went, what are you picking on him for? He was just, I don't even know if he was drunken, but he was probably a bloke with a bit too much money and a bit too much attitude. And he was just leery at him and giving out to him. And I said, you don't know why he ended up here. Like, who are you to tell him? And like, my brother had to come along and drag him, get out of it. You get yourself beaten up. Dare him to. But yeah, things like that.
That would be considered reckless, but you seem to have a sense of fairness that gets you to act, or
I would, yeah. Well, and it's something I would like to instill in my kids is, you know, if you don't think it would be nice to happen to you, then it's not okay to do it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't remember where we were going in the car one day, and somebody made an innocuous comment that somebody had said to somebody else, and I was like, I stopped the car. And I hear any of you ever say anything like that to anybody, I will be coming down on you like a ton of bloody bricks. You don't say that shit. Well, you didn't I don't care how he meant it. When I calmed down, I was like, okay, I know it wasn't. We didn't say it. I know you didn't say it. I'm just warning you, don't say it.
What will you not compromise on? So, like, what for you is the bottom line? What you will not what's not negotiable for you?
Integrity and honesty. Those are two traits that it's like, look, last year loads of people said to me, why don't you do yoga online a lot? And there's loads of great yoga teachers out there. You need a lot of equipment. I gave excuses, but integrity, it just didn't feel right to me. And I would have to come to it in my own time, not out of a sense of necessity. And honest, you know, if you can trust what somebody says to you, you may not like what they say, but if you can trust what they say to you, you can deal with it. And I would have a lot of respect for somebody who's honest. I don't like schleeving, sneaky, manipulative. And if I sense that at all, I'm like, my heckles rise and I go, back off, girlfriend.
Yeah. Okay, so when you think of yourself as an ancestor, as an ancestor of the future, how do you see that responsibility for you, or how can you be
mindful for the next generation?
Yeah, yes. Or if you think about yourself as a living ancestor.
Well, just to practice what I preach would be a huge thing. To mind my little part of the planet as much as I can in a non, it's mine, but more, I can do what I do in a safe, non-invasive kind of way. To be forgiving.
Yeah.
To listen. And to give good hugs.
Oh, yes, going forward, certainly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Virtually, my darling, can you feel it?
They're not the same. A physical hug, absolutely. Hopefully, we look forward to the future. How do you honor your ancestors? So that's you know, how you wish to be as a future ancestor. How do you honor the ancestors?
I don't actually live anywhere near where any of mine are buried, for example. But when I did, I would have visited. So my grandparents in Inishmore, they lived at the bottom of our road. And when we used to go and wait for the nursery bus, I would take my kids into the graveyard and they would go around kissing all the stones and cherubs. And we'd say Nanny and Grandad are in there, and so is Uncle Ronan. But recently, and I suppose I've lived in one of the places that my parents came from, and I would know a lot about the areas that they both did. But recently, sometime last year, I interviewed this lady from a radio show who makes glass beads. she has a PhD, and part of her PhD was medieval glassmaking.
Oh,
so she, for her PhD, for the she didn't have to do it, but she decided that she would like to learn how to make glass beads, because she figured that would give her a better understanding and therefore would be more beneficial for her. So it became a thing then, kind of a small business. So she also lectures part-time in NUIG. So I interviewed her, and as we were having a conversation, she was saying, oh yeah, I got somebody asked me to make a glass bead from somebody's cremation ashes. So I did that. I incorporated them into the bead. It was a really nice way to, I suppose, carry the person with you. And I've made ones for people that came from places that are special to them. You know, they gathered a bit of sand or grit or dirt or whatever, and I bended it in. So I liked that idea. So we were in the Great Pause, so I couldn't physically go to the places where my ancestors. So my father comes be about 2 and a bit hours away from where I am, and where my mother is from is just a bit over an hour away. So I got somebody to post me sand from Inishmore, and I got my uncle to deliver me sand from the beach that's directly opposite where my mother came from. Wow. Both my parents were born, as we'd like to say, a stone's throw from the sea. So I gave them to Mags, and Mags made beads out of them. So what I did, though, was I got beads made for every member of my family. So, because she told me the story of how when she was studying her PhD that there was this story about this lady had come from Africa, and her son had moved away from her then, and then sometime later he got her beads and he knew that she had passed away. So they were like a family heirloom, and another bead would be added of his, and then they would be passed on again. So I got beads made for all my siblings and my kids, and one is blue and grey, is from Inishmore, and the other one is brown and green for the seaweed, because there's a lot of seaweed where my mother is from. There's a lot of seaweed in Arran too, but particularly where she's from when the tide goes out. And so each of them have a bead of our ancestry from where our parents came from. So which to me is, it's very important. And I would have moved house a huge amount, not 50 million times, but I went to like 2 primary schools and 3 secondary schools, and I moved a lot. So when people say to me about going home, I go, wherever I live. Yeah, I make my own home. And so that connection to a place for me is very important. So I'd like to think that was honouring them. I've yet to give my dad his ones.
That is just, I just see, Jean, why you beat me to it. You're going to use this, you've used the same words. That's a beautiful thing to do. It is. I'm just really moved by that. I think that is absolutely wonderful.
My brother's reaction was the best, actually, because he's the biggest girl of the 3. We have 4 in my family, 1 boy, and he's the biggest girl. And he was like, one for me, one for me. Oh my goodness, one for me. I was like, yeah. And you could hang them, you know, you get a little piece of leather and you can hang around your neck, or you can hang them on your keychain or whatever. But it's a bead that's made particularly from the places where our parents came from. So there are heirlooms.
That is just lovely. Oh, I'm just blown away by that. I'm so glad I asked you this question. That's really, really lovely. You mentioned somebody being cremated. How would you like, you know, when you pass, would you like to be cremated?
Mm-hmm. I was aiming for cremation, but I've heard that it's not possibly the most environmentally friendly. But I have told my children, I said, you bury me, lads, I'll come back and I'll haunt you. So it's either going to burn me on some pyre and gather my ashes and off doing the caher. I said, but just make sure that the wind isn't coming from the west, because they'll blow back on you. But that might be my way of blessing you.
I knew a woman, and she said she wanted to be excarnated, to be left on top of Slieve na Mon for the ravens to clean her bones. When I lived in Turkana, it's a desert in the north of Kenya in the early 80s, there was no burial. That people were left out for the hyenas to pick the bones clean. And
that's what they said the Celts did. And they gathered the bones once they were cleaned and then put them into the tombs. So they didn't bury people either. So, yeah, and look, okay, maybe you don't want to see them on the streets, but having said that, if you're buried and eaten by worms, you know, like my mother is buried 35 years now. So to me, she's no longer there. She's not in that space. She's here.
Yeah.
and she's in each of my kids, and she's in the trees that I see. There's as much of her there as there is there. So yeah, and I suppose there's a little touch of guilt to a certain degree around the fact that I don't live. None of us live actually close to her anymore, but we used to live there in Cork, and we're all three of us are in Galway now. So nobody's visiting her regularly. But my brother would go, but he's still even an hour and a half away. So there's a bit of me goes, I wouldn't like that onus to be on my children, you know. So cremate me, lads, throw me off doing the caher and let me rove the goat path.
It's an interesting, because you know Howard is buried next door. And I rarely go there unless somebody comes and says, can I go and visit Howard? Because he's out here in my garden. Because that's where he told me he'd be, you know, with his spirit, with the birds and the islands and the trees and the mountains. So, and that's where I see him, and that's where I go to talk to him. He's also in the house, but it's not the grave. Yet there's something nice about, for people who are looking for their ancestors to go back and to see a place, a marker. I mean, I suppose everybody's different. There's some people who like to regularly visit a grave, but I get the point, you know, not wanting to put it on your kids to have to or feel.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of stuff around that. Yeah. And it's not an issue as such, but my older sister would go and plan a church service in the church near my mother and say, you know, I'm having this anniversary mass. And I go, yeah, I'm going to go and sit under a tree. Because she gardened too, you know. She did go to mass, so you do that bit and I'll do this. Yeah. And I don't really do mass, so each to their own.
So do you, so following just two questions. What's your favorite season of the year?
Oh, see, then when I start talking about that, I'm like, oh, this season is wonderful for this. This season is wonderful. Oh, this season is wonderful for this. And then there's the crunchiness of the leaves in autumn. I'm going to love that. I don't really have one. There's all the seasons are wonderful for their differences. Usually related to plants, actually.
Sorry?
Usually related to plants.
Plants. Okay, so you celebrate the Wheel of the Year, because I know that. I don't know if you do it every 6 weeks, but of the 8 festivals, which is your favorite?
I think it's possibly actually the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice, because it means that it's halfway there and we're coming out of it. And one winter solstice, I was involved in an event that was held up at Glebe House. They asked me to do sound baths at the end of it. It's the biggest sound bath I ever played, or amount of people I ever played. There's 104 people at it, a 2-story wooden dwelling, and some people were upstairs, so therefore the sound resonated. It was wonderful. Anyway, the whole experience was wonderful. But the next morning we went to walk to Newgrange. So you know, the astrologically the time move or the date can move slightly and blah blah blah. So this was on the Sunday. It wasn't technically speaking the day. I think it was Tuesday was actually the 22nd, I think, if memory serves me correctly. Anyway, so we were to walk in kind of procession at 7 a.m. when the sun began to come up in the quiet. Some people observed that, and some people didn't, and it's fine. I was quite happy to walk in silence. Just going, oh, I'm going to Newgrange. I had been before when I was a child, a couple of times, but I hadn't been in a while. And so anyway, we went to Newgrange. We did our ceremony. The sun came up over the hill opposite about just after 9 o'clock, and we were doing our ceremony outside of Newgrange. So then, of course, there's that big lottery for people to enter into the chamber, and there's only a certain amount of tickets are given. But what I didn't realise until that day was that if you happen to be there, you can go in afterwards. They would give you a ticket, and I went, all my Christmases have come together. And there was a girl that was with me that was actually from Alaska. I have family that live in Alaska. She traveled all the way down with me, and she was like, I can't believe I'm going to get in here. And I said, shut up, girl. I can't believe I'm going to get in here. So we weren't in bang on the whole chamber being lit, but there was still light in the chamber.
Oh, lovely.
And I was like, oh, I just can't believe it. I can't believe I'm here. I was my face was just cracked in a big goofy smile. And I just thought, wow. So yeah, it probably is my favorite. And it's coming up to Christmas, which, though it's a Christian festival, there's a niceness about it. There's, there's a coming together, there's good food, there's silly presents, there's catching up with people. There might be a bit of mentalness coming up to it, but yeah, I did probably the winter solstice.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, most people say Samhain, actually. It's really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's anyway, listen, we've come to the end of our time. It has been an absolute joy talking to Fiona, and there's some lovely comments. So you and I will look at the comments again, and then you'll be free to respond to any. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. And I'm just going to, you stay where you are. I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody here. So thank you so much for your comments. Just loved your discussion this evening. This is from Pauline. Can relate so much to what has been said tonight. My husband's ashes are still in a box waiting to be scattered. Lovely. Thank you all for your lovely comments. And I know sometimes I can't get to read them all because it goes up so fast. So if I haven't answered them but Fiona we'll read them anyway. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you next week, where I have another guest. And just to remind you that, our online, our first time ever online summer gathering will be on Saturday, the 19th of June at 10 a.m. And that's British summer time, where we will have speakers in the morning, the afternoon, and then an afternoon ceremony. So normally our ceremonies are at 7 p.m., but this one will be 3:30 p.m. And then we'll have a nice dead foot in the evening. So that is open to everybody. So thank you all for joining me. And till I see you again next week, Slán go fóill.